The wind sliced across the plains like a dull blade, dragging dust and the shriek of iron wheels along freshly laid rail. Sarah Whitfield pressed her hand to the grimy window of the cramped rooms above the trading post, watching the sky bleed red beneath another dying autumn sun. Down below, her husband Edgar Boone counted coins with the same devotion other men gave to scripture. "Sarah, get down here," his voice snapped sharp. "We've got company." She straightened her worn blue dress, one of only two she owned, and stepped onto the narrow staircase. The boards creaked beneath her, each step carrying her closer to whatever scheme Edgar had cooked up this time. At 23, she had learned the warnings, the jittery tap of his fingers, the way his eyes slid away whenever money entered the room. 3 men stood crowded inside the dim post. She recognized 2 immediately, Miles Cutter and Roy Haskins, card sharps who drifted between saloons from here to Rapid City. The third man was unfamiliar, clean-shaven, well-dressed, too polished for this place. "There's my wife," Edgar said with forced cheer. "Sarah, meet Mr. Victor Langley. He's got a way to wipe our debts clean." Langley's smile moved slow and cold, like a snake tasting the air. "Mrs. Boone, your husband speaks highly of your dependability. Does he?" Sarah kept her tone steady while her stomach tightened. "She's good for it," Edgar cut in quickly. "Whatever needs signing, she'll sign." Langley reached into his vest and produced a folded paper. "Actually, it's already signed. Your husband listed you as collateral for his obligations." The room seemed to tilt. Sarah gripped the counter. "He did what?" "Now, Sarah." "You traded me like livestock," she snapped. "Like property." "It's temporary," Edgar insisted. "Just until I settle up. A formality." Langley chuckled softly. "Oh, it's quite enforceable. If Mr. Boone defaults, you'll be working off his debt at one of my operations. Railroad camps always need women for hospitality." The meaning struck her hard and cold. She searched Edgar's face for the man who once swore he'd protect her. She found only a stranger tallying someone else's money. "I won't do it," she said. Miles Cutter shifted, his hand drifting toward his hip. "Ma'am, you don't understand. It's already done." The back door creaked. Noah Whitfield stumbled inside with an armload of firewood, his 16-year-old frame still thin from growing too fast. He took one look at the room and froze. "Sarah, what's wrong?" "Nothing," Edgar barked. "Get upstairs." But Noah knew danger when he felt it. He set the wood down slowly and moved closer to his sister. Langley tucked the paper away. "You've got tonight to come to terms with it. My men will collect you tomorrow at noon. Don't make us hunt you," he added lightly, before turning away. After they left, Edgar poured whiskey with shaking hands. "It's not as bad as it sounds. A few months. Maybe less if luck turns." Sarah slapped the glass from his hand. It shattered against the wall, amber spilling like tears. "You sold me. I had no choice. They would have killed me." "Then you should have died like a man," she said coldly, "instead of living like a coward." She turned to Noah. "Pack what you can carry. We're leaving." "You can't," Edgar snarled, grabbing her arm. "I'll tell the marshal you stole from the till. They'll hunt you down." She tore free. Let them try. Within the hour, she and Noah slipped out the back with 2 canteens, hardtack, her mother's blue kerchief, and Edgar's spare rifle. The moonless night forced them to trust memory and starlight as they headed northwest, away from the railroad, toward the Badlands, where even desperate men hesitated. By dawn, the wind howled harder, flinging dust into their eyes and mouths. Noah's cough worried her. He'd never fully recovered after their parents died of fever. They needed shelter, water, rest. but stopping meant capture. "How far to the river?" Noah asked. "Another day, maybe 2, if we're lucky." Her boots rubbed her feet raw, and somewhere behind them, dogs barked. Edgar Boone hadn't waited until noon. They topped the ridge and stopped cold. Below them, a small group of riders cut across the valley, native men by their posture and dress. Apache, most likely. Sarah Whitfield's hand slid toward the rifle at her shoulder. "Don't," Noah Whitfield whispered. "If they're hostile, we're dead anyway." The riders had already seen them. 5 men moved with an easy confidence that came from knowing every inch of this land. The lead rider was younger than Sarah expected. Late 20s, sharp-boned, eyes that missed nothing. He spoke a few words in Apache, then switched to English. "You're running from someone." "Not a question." Sarah straightened, masking her fear. "That's our concern. Everything on this land is our concern." His English was clean, educated. "The men behind you," he went on. "They bring dogs." Noah coughed hard, bending double. The rider's gaze flicked to the boy, noting the pallor. "Your brother is sick." "He's fine," Sarah lied. The rider studied them. A white woman and a boy, fleeing, desperate. Far off, the baying grew louder. "Those men," he said at last. "They work for the railroad." Sarah nodded. A look passed among the riders. The leader made his choice. "Come. The river will lose the dogs." "Why help us?" Sarah asked. His smile was thin as winter ice. "An enemy of the railroad is an ally of ours." He glanced at Noah, swaying on his feet. "Letting children die brings bad medicine." She had no real choice. They followed the riders along hidden routes, draws and cuts she never would have found alone. The leader rode beside her in silence until she asked his name. "Koa," he said. "Firstborn." "Sarah," she replied. "This is my brother, Noah." He tried her name. "Sounds like ice falling from the sky." "That's hail, Hail, she said. "English." Koa shook his head. "Same sound, different meaning. Always trouble." Despite herself, she almost smiled. They reached the river as the sun climbed. An Apache camp stretched along the bank, dozens of lodges, smoke rising from morning fires. Women paused in their work, children peeked from behind skirts. Sarah felt every eye on her. An elder woman stepped forward, her face lined deep, her gaze sharp. She spoke quickly to Koa in Apache, gesturing toward the strangers. "Naya asks why I bring danger to our camp," Koa translated. "Then why did you?" Sarah asked. Koa dismounted, lifting Noah down. The boy burned with fever now. "Because sometimes," Koa said, "the right trail is also the hard one." Naya examined Noah with practiced hands, clicking her tongue. She barked orders, sending younger women for herbs and water. Koa turned back to Sarah. "She will help. But you must speak true," he added. "Why are they hunting you?" Sarah looked at him, at the camp that might shelter them or kill them. Truth felt like the only coin worth offering. "My husband sold me to cover his debts," she said. "Like livestock, like property. I refuse to belong to him." Koa was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Among my people, a woman owns herself, even in marriage. She keeps her lodge, her things. A man who tried what your husband did would be cast out." Sarah exhaled. "Then I'm where I need to be." Across the water, dogs howled in frustration. Edgar Boone's justice would have to wait. For now, Sarah was free. Free enough to breathe, to think, to choose. Naya emerged from a lodge and nodded once. Noah would live. The fever would break. "Thank you," Sarah said, meaning it. Koa studied her with dark, steady eyes. The men who hunt you won't stop at the river. You bring danger here. Then I'll leave as soon as Noah can travel. To go where? Koa asked. Back to the man who sold you? Forward to the one who bought you? He shook his head. No. You stay until we decide. The railroad already makes war on us, he said quietly. What's one more enemy? He turned to go, then paused. Your mother's kerchief, Koa said quietly. Blue as a summer sky. She is gone. Sarah Whitfield touched the cloth at her throat, her fingers lingering on the worn fabric. 3 winters have passed, he continued, yet she still watches you. Blue is the color of protection in the West, where spirits walk. He smiled then, truly smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. Perhaps that is why the wind carried you to us. As Koa walked away, Sarah realized her feet no longer ached. The sun felt gentle instead of cruel. Noah Whitfield's breathing had steadied inside the healing lodge. She wasn't safe, might never be safe, but for the first time since Edgar Boone had revealed his true nature, she could imagine a future that didn't end in chains. The wind shifted, bringing wood smoke and sage. Somewhere, a child laughed. Sarah closed her eyes and let herself rest. Morning mist rose from the Powder River like drifting spirits. She woke to the sound of women singing, their voices flowing through the camp in a rhythm that matched her own heartbeat. 3 days had passed since Koa brought them here. 3 days of learning how much she had been wrong, or simply ignorant about Apache life. Sarah, Noah called from outside the lodge where Naya had been tending him. Come see what Nico is teaching me. She stepped out to find her brother sitting cross-legged with a group of Apache boys, learning to shape arrows. The fever had broken the day before, leaving him weak but alert. Nico, no more than 14, guided Noah's hands with careful patience. Feathers must come from the same wing, he explained in steady English. Otherwise the arrow flies crooked, like a drunk white man. The boys laughed. Noah grinned, the first real smile she'd seen since their parents died. You're sleeping better, a voice said behind her. Koa stood there with 2 horses, dressed for riding. You don't jump at every sound now. Hard to, Sarah said, when Naya keeps pouring that tea down my throat. What's in it? Better you don't know. Koa handed her the reins of a spotted mare. Come. If you stay, you learn our ways. I thought you hadn't decided if we could stay. I decide nothing alone, he said. The council meets tonight. But first, you work. Everyone works. Sarah had never ridden bareback, but the mare tolerated her awkward climb. They rode upstream to where women were processing the last meat from a hunt. The sight stopped her, not because of blood or labor, but because of the precision. Nothing wasted. Every piece mattered. Your face, Koa observed. You expected savagery. I didn't mean— Yes, you did, he said calmly. That is how your people are taught to see us. It makes taking our land easier when we are seen as animals. A woman named Mira showed Sarah how to cut strips for drying, how to pull sinew for thread, how to scrape hide without tearing it. Sarah's hands, already rough from years at the trading post, learned quickly. Other women watched her, some curious, some wary. She works hard for a Wasaku, one woman said in Apache, not knowing Sarah had begun to recognize words. Hard work is hard work, Mira replied. The color of hands doesn't matter if they're willing. By midday, Sarah's back burned and her arms shook, but she had filled 2 racks. Koa had vanished to other duties, leaving her among the women. Their suspicion slowly thinned as she neither complained nor shirked. Your man? A younger woman asked in broken English. He sold you? My husband, Sarah said. Yes. Disgust rippled through the group. One woman spat. No good. Here, another said firmly. A woman owns her lodge. If a man leaves, he goes with nothing. Sometimes not even his clothes. Laughter followed. Sarah laughed too, picturing Edgar Boone naked and shivering on the plains. The image was more satisfying than she expected. A stir near the river drew their attention. Riders. Non-Apache. Sarah's heart slammed as she recognized the lead man, Marshal Owen Pike from the county seat. Fair, perhaps, but fair men still enforced bad laws. Koa appeared at her side like smoke, but Pike had already seen her. He rode forward slowly, hands visible, stopping at the edge of camp where warriors had gathered. I come in peace, he called. I need to speak with Mrs. Hale. There is no Mrs. Hale here, Koa replied evenly. Son, I can see her standing right there. Marshal Owen Pike lifted his hat and wiped sweat from his brow. Sarah, I need to speak with you about your husband. Ignoring Koa's warning hand at her arm, Sarah Whitfield stepped forward. About what? He's filed charges, Pike said. Claims you stole money and goods from the trading post. I've got a warrant for your arrest. That's a lie. Maybe, Pike replied, uneasy, but it's a lie the law treats as true until proven otherwise. He looked genuinely troubled. You know I don't have a choice. Come peaceful, and we'll sort it out proper. Sort it out? Sarah's voice rose. The way Victor Langley sorted my husband's debts, by turning me into property? Pike shifted in the saddle. That contract ain't exactly legal either, but if you run, it makes you look guilty of what Edgar Boone is claiming. If you come with me, you'll get a trial, fair as I can make it. Koa stepped between them. Your fair trials, he said evenly. We know them. How many of my people hang after fair trials? This is different, Pike insisted. Because she's white, Koa replied, his voice cutting sharp. Now leave. Warriors shifted. Hands hovered near weapons. Pike counted the odds, 20-1, and knew better. I'll be back, he said. To Sarah, he added, with more men if I have to. Don't make this worse than it needs to be. After he rode out, the camp hummed with tension. The council gathered early. Voices rolled through the great lodge like distant thunder. Sarah wasn't allowed inside, but she didn't need to be to know the question. Sheltering her put everyone at risk. Noah Whitfield found her by the river, skipping stones into the burning sky. We should leave, he said quietly, before we bring them more trouble. And go where? Sarah asked. California? Oregon? Somewhere Edgar can't reach? With what money? What food? What protection? She hurled another stone, harder. He's already put the word out. Every town will be watching. She studied her brother. In 3 days, the sickly gray had left his face, replaced by something steadier. Confidence, maybe. Hope. You like it here? She asked. They don't treat me like I'm broken, Noah said. He skipped a stone clean across the water. Nico says I could be a good hunter once I'm stronger. Says I notice things others miss. Before she could answer, Naya appeared, motioning them toward the lodge. The council had decided. Inside, pipe smoke hung heavy with consequence. Elders sat in a circle. Koa was among them despite his youth, his face unreadable. An older man, Talon, the chief, spoke while Koa translated. The council has heard many words, Talon said. Some believe sheltering you brings danger we do not need. Others believe turning away those in need brings worse danger to our spirits. He studied Sarah. Speak the truth. Why should our people risk safety for a white woman's troubles? Sarah stood. Her legs trembled, but her voice held. You shouldn't, she said. We've brought you nothing but trouble. She drew a breath. But my husband sold me. Like your people have been sold at government auctions, like property, like I wasn't human. She met their eyes. You asked for truth. The truth is, I would rather die free than live as someone's belongings. The elders conferred in low voices. Then Talon spoke again. The woman who calls herself Hale will stay. He raised his fingers as Koa translated. First, she works like everyone. No special treatment. Second, she learns our ways, our words. Third, when lawmen come again, and they will, she stands with us, not behind us. A pause. Talon's eyes twinkled faintly. Fourth, she teaches our children the white man's writing. If we must fight with papers as well as rifles, our young must know both weapons. Sarah nodded, her throat tight. I accept. Gratefully. Don't be too grateful, Koa said quietly. Koa said it later as he walked her back toward Naya's lodge. You just agreed to the hardest work in the camp. Teaching Apache children, he told her, was like trying to break wild mustangs, harder than skinning buffalo, harder than hauling hides. Buffalo don't argue, he added dryly. That night, lying awake with the river murmuring nearby and distant drums beating low, Sarah Whitfield thought about boundaries, the ones drawn on maps, the ones written into law, the ones standing between peoples. Out here they felt thinner, less certain, like the river itself, always moving, always shifting, sometimes vanishing underground only to surface somewhere unexpected. A shadow crossed the lodge opening. Koa's voice came soft in the dark. Sarah, you asked why I helped you. She sat up. Yes. My sister, he said quietly. 2 winters ago, soldiers took her to an agency school, said they would civilize her. Old pain roughened his voice. She ran. They caught her, sent her back. He paused. She ran again. The 3rd time, they chained her. His breath caught. She died of the coughing sickness in that school, died in chains. Silence stretched. So when I see a woman refuse to be owned, refuse chains, I think of her. Maybe helping you set something right. He was gone before she could answer. Sarah lay back, but sleep stayed away. A wolf howled. Another answered. The sound should have frightened her. Instead, it felt like freedom. Tomorrow would bring trouble. Marshal Owen Pike would return with more men. Edgar Boone would twist his lies tighter. Victor Langley would demand what he claimed was his. The fragile peace of the camp would be tested. But tonight, she belonged to no one. The drums kept their ancient rhythm, and at last sleep claimed her. In her dreams, she ran with wolves across an endless plain, her mother's blue kerchief streaming behind her like wings. Morning broke red over the Badlands as Koa's proposal hung between them like smoke. Sarah tightened her grip on her reins, studying the man who had become her unlikely protector. A traveling judge, she repeated. You want me to face their law? Not their law, Koa said, eyes on the horizon. The law. Judge Samuel Crowley rides circuit through Fort Pierre next week. He's different. Fair, even to Apache. If we present your case right, he can undo Edgar Boone's claims. And if he won't, then we run. But running forever is no life. He turned his horse. You teach our children to read their papers. It's time you learn to fight with those same weapons. They had been riding since dawn, accompanied by 2 warriors, Ash and Raku, both familiar with the careful dance of white men's justice. This judge, Sarah asked Ash, why do you trust him? Trust? Ash snorted. I trust the sunrise. I trust my horse. White judges, I watch. He shrugged. But Crowley ruled for my cousin once, against white settlers who had powerful friends. The trail cut through canyon country, each mile pulling them farther from the camp's safety. Sarah had learned to fire the old carbine, practicing until her shoulder bloomed purple. Now it lay across her saddle, loaded. "Riders," Raku warned. 4 men came in fast from the east. Sarah recognized Miles Cutter at once, Edgar Boone's card-playing friend. The others were hired guns, their intent written in how they rode. "Well, well," Miles called, reining up just beyond rifle range. "Mrs. Hail! Your husband's been worried sick." "Has he?" Sarah kept her voice steady. "Worried about his debts, more like." "That ain't charitable," Miles said. "A man's got a right to his property." "A woman isn't property," Sarah said quietly. Miles laughed. "Says who? Law's clear. She's married. She belongs to her husband." "Then why bring 4 armed men to fetch 1 woman?" Sarah asked. "Persuasion." Miles's hand settled on his pistol. "See, Langley's growing impatient. Every day you hold that gun costs money." "We're here to collect her," Miles Cutter said. "Peaceful, if possible. Otherwise, if necessary." "Try," Raku suggested mildly. The moment stretched tight. Sarah Whitfield felt more than saw Koa shift his horse, angling his body to shield her. Her finger settled on the carbine's trigger. 4 against 4, Ash observed calmly. "But we know this land. You don't." Miles's grin faltered. He'd expected a lone woman and a sickly boy, not armed Apache warriors. "This ain't finished," he snapped. "That warrant stands. Every lawman in the territory will be hunting her." "Let them hunt," Koa said evenly. When the men pulled back, the group rode hard for 2 hours, weaving through broken ground to throw off pursuit. At last, Raku called a halt at a hidden spring. "They'll be back," Sarah said as she watered her horse. "Yes," Koa agreed, dismounting to check for tracks. "But now they know you're not alone. That changes everything." "I've brought you nothing but trouble." "You've brought us an opening," he said, meeting her gaze. "Your people take our land with papers, laws we can't read. You teach our children to read. That is worth any trouble." They camped that night without fire, chewing dried meat and watching the stars. Ash spoke of the old days, before the railroad, before the endless tide of settlers. His voice held loss, not bitterness, like a man recounting a dream. "Your brother?" Raku asked Sarah. "He's holding up?" "He is," she said. "Stronger every day. Nico has him convinced he'll be a great warrior." "Maybe he will," Raku smiled. Stranger things happen. A white woman learning to tan hide. Who would believe it? Morning brought bad news. Fresh tracks cut the dust. At least a dozen riders had passed in the night, heading for the Apache camp. "Marshal Owen Pike," Koa said grimly, "with reinforcements." They rode hard, and arrived to find the standoff already set. Pike stood at the camp's edge with 15 men, deputized townsfolk, and Victor Langley's hired guns. Apache warriors formed a protective line, weapons visible but lowered. Talon faced them, Naya beside him translating. Noah Whitfield stood with the women and children, pale but resolute. "We are not harboring fugitives," Talon said through Naya. "The woman sought sanctuary by our law. We give it. Your law does not rule here." "This is federal territory," Pike replied, uneasy. "Since when?" Ash called as he rode in. "The last treaty says otherwise." Pike turned and saw Sarah. "Ma'am, please," he said. "Don't make this harder. Come peaceful, and I guarantee fair treatment." "Like Victor Langley's fair contract?" Sarah dismounted and stepped forward. "Like my husband's fair accusations?" She stood straight, drawing on every lesson of dignity she'd learned here. "I'll come, but only to see Judge Samuel Crowley, and only if my brother and Koa come with me." Sarah, no, Noah started, but Naya caught his arm. Pike weighed it. Crowley's in Fort Pierre by week's end? Yes, Sarah said. That's where we meet, not before. I can't do that, Pike said. Orders are to bring you in now. The tension tightened. Warriors shifted. Townsmen fingered their weapons, suddenly unsure. One spark would have turned the valley into bloodshed. Then Victor Langley forced his way through the crowd, his tailored suit dulled with dust from the road. Enough of this, he barked at Marshal Owen Pike. Arrest that woman, or I'll see you stripped of your badge. Mr. Langley, Sarah Whitfield called out, her voice carrying so everyone could hear. Tell them about your contract. Tell them exactly what kind of work you expected from me at your railroad camps. Color rushed into his face. Standard labor agreement. You're lying. Sarah reached into her dress and pulled out a folded paper. Not the original, but a copy I made. Shall I read aloud the duties you listed? That's stolen property, Langley snapped. A woman can't steal words written about her own body, she said. She turned to the townsmen. How many of you have wives? Daughters? Would you want them bound by a contract like this? A murmur rippled through Pike's men. Some of them knew Langley's reputation. They'd heard the whispers about his so-called hospitality workers. Marshal, one deputy said quietly, maybe we ought to wait for the judge? You work for me, Langley snarled. No, sir, the man answered. We're sworn deputies. We work for the law. Pike made his choice. Mrs. Whitfield, you have 3 days. Present yourself before Judge Samuel Crowley in Fort Pierre. If you don't, he paused. I'll return with the army if I have to. She'll be there, Koa said. As the crowd thinned, Langley lingered, his stare heavy with promise. You've made a mistake, squaw man. You and your red friends. I have influence you can't imagine. Koa's smile was cold. Your influence is paper. Paper burns. That evening the council gathered again, this time with Sarah invited inside. Smoke stung her eyes, but she sat straight, listening. She goes to their judge, one elder said. She may never return. If she doesn't go, another argued, they bring soldiers. Many will die. Talon raised his hand for silence. Koa, you believe this judge will be just? He's our best chance, Koa answered. Sarah has learned our ways. She's shown respect, and she is white. That gives her a voice in their courts we do not have. Then we use their own medicine against them, Naya said. The woman speaks for us. We speak for her. The vote was close, but the decision was made. Sarah would face the judge, accompanied by Koa and witnesses. If the law failed, they would decide again. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Sarah found Koa by the river, keeping watch. Scared? He asked. Terrified. She sat beside him. I've never spoken in a courtroom, never fought with words instead of hands. You fought Langley with words today, Koa said. His own men turned on him. That was anger. No, he said quietly. That was truth. He skipped a stone across the water. My sister, before they took her, asked why we didn't learn their ways, beat them at their own game. I told her our ways were better. He stared at the dark water. Now I think she was right. We need both. Warriors who can fight, and warriors who can read their papers, speak in their courts. He looked at Sarah. Warriors like you. Heat rose to her cheeks. I'm no warrior. You fought your husband. You stood against Langley. You teach our children. He met her eyes. What else is a warrior? A coyote called, answered by its pack. The sound felt like family, like belonging. Without thinking, Sarah reached out and touched Koa's hand. He didn't pull away. Whatever happens in Fort Pierre, she said softly, I want you to know. These weeks have given me something I didn't know I was missing. Sarah, he said gently, don't speak words you might regret. Your world and mine, are they really so different? Both built on family, on protecting what matters. She swallowed. Your people would never accept. He watched the river, silent, as the question hung between them. My own people sold me, Sarah Whitfield said. The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. Yours gave me freedom. Koa turned her hand palm up, tracing the calluses that now mirrored his own. After the judge, he said quietly. We'll speak of this. After. I promise. I promise nothing, she answered. Except the truth. That's all anyone can give. She returned to her lodge carrying the weight of the days ahead. Fort Pierre meant more than a courtroom. It meant facing Edgar Boone, Victor Langley, and everything she had fled. But she was no longer the woman who ran in terror weeks ago. She had learned to skin buffalo, read weather in the clouds, shoot straight, and speak plainly. Most of all, she had learned that belonging wasn't blood or birth. It was choosing where to stand. And she would stand with the people who had shown her what freedom meant. The smell of coffee and bacon drifted from Iris Dalton's boarding house as Sarah watched Fort Pierre wake. 3 days had passed since their arrival. 3 days of careful alliances while waiting for Judge Samuel Crowley. Koa moved through town like smoke, gathering whispers and favors. You sure about this? Iris asked, topping off Sarah's cup. The older woman ran the cleanest house in town and heard everything worth knowing. Langley's been scattering money like seed corn. We found friends too, Sarah said. Miles Cutter at the Double Bar says Langley cheated him on cattle prices. And Jonah Keller, he lost grazing rights when the railroad cut off his water. Building a coalition, Iris said, pleased. Smart. Enough, though? There's more. Iris lowered her voice. My girl Clara May overheard Langley last night. He keeps ledgers, bribes, land grabs, forged papers in the hotel safe. Sarah's pulse quickened. Those could prove that he's a snake? Iris finished. Everyone knows that. Question is how you get them. The door opened. Koa entered with Noah Whitfield and a new companion, Father Lucas Moreno from the Spanish mission. The priest had served settlers and natives for 20 years, earning trust on both sides. Father Moreno will speak to Sarah's character, Koa said. More than that, the priest added, accepting coffee. I've been recording certain activities, railroad agents pressuring farmers, fires at properties that refuse to sell. Mrs. Whitfield's case is part of a larger pattern. You think Judge Crowley will care? Sarah asked. Crowley lost his own farm to railroad schemes before he studied law, Father Moreno said. He understands how power crushes the vulnerable. A stir outside drew them to the window. An early snowstorm rolled down from the north, clouds heavy with ice. That's trouble, Iris muttered. Storm like that could close the passes. Or provide cover, Koa said thoughtfully. As snow began to fall, Sarah made her rounds, visiting the Kellers, the Jensens, even a few of Marshal Owen Pike's deputies who'd shown sympathy. Each talk added a thread to the web they were weaving. At the general store, she spotted a familiar figure wrapped in a trader's blanket, studying cloth. Grandmother, Sarah said in Apache, surprised. Naya smiled. You think we'd let you face wolves alone? She nodded subtly. Many are here, watching. Storms hide more than snow. Outside, Sarah noticed what others missed. An Apache man leaning against a wall like any trader, another watering horses at the trough. Koa hadn't brought her alone. He'd brought protection. Be careful, Naya warned. Your husband arrived this morning. He drinks at the Silver Dollar, spreading lies. Sarah's stomach tightened. She had dreaded this moment. Inside the saloon, Edgar Boone held court, whiskey loosening his tongue. His audience cared more for free drinks than his tales. "There she is," Edgar slurred, spotting her. He staggered up. "My devoted wife, come to beg forgiveness." "I came to hear what new lies you're selling," Sarah said, keeping her distance as patrons turned to watch. "Lies?" he sneered. "You stole from me, ran off with savages, probably spreading your legs for that red—" The slap cracked across the room, sharp as a gunshot. Edgar Boone staggered back, a hand flying to his cheek. "Careful," Sarah Whitfield said evenly. "You're showing everyone who you really are." "You struck me," Edgar barked, scanning the room for sympathy and finding only uneasy faces. "She's violent, unstable." "Looks to me like she had reason," a rancher muttered. Edgar's face darkened. "I own you. The law says so." "The law says many things," a calm voice answered. Judge Samuel Crowley stood in the saloon doorway, snow dusting his traveling coat. Though past 60, he carried quiet authority. The room fell silent. "I arrived early," the judge said, "and I've been reviewing your situation, Mr. Boone. A most instructive case. False accusations, fraudulent contracts." Your Honor," Edgar stammered. "I didn't know." "Evidently," Crowley cut in, eyes cold as winter. "We'll convene tomorrow morning, weather permitting." He turned to Sarah. "Mrs. Whitfield, I trust you have representation." "She does," Koa said, stepping from the shadows. "I speak for her." "An Indian?" Edgar sputtered. "You can't be serious." "Mr. Koa has standing in my court," Judge Crowley replied mildly. "As does anyone seeking justice. Tomorrow, 9 o'clock, Town Hall. Don't be late." As the judge departed, Victor Langley pushed forward, his usual polish stripped away by fury. "This changes nothing," he hissed at Sarah. "I hold your husband's markers. Either he pays, or you work it off." "Nothing about your business is legal," Sarah answered. "We'll see what's legal when—" A hand clamped onto Langley's shoulder. Raku loomed behind him, having appeared without sound. "Storm's getting worse," he said calmly. "Dangerous night. Accidents happen." Langley shrugged free, bravado cracking. He wasn't used to being the threatened one. That night, the blizzard hit in full force. Sarah huddled inside Iris Dalton's boarding house with their allies, planning for the morning. Father Lucas Moreno spread documents across the table. Marshal Owen Pike, won over by evidence and conscience, shared what he knew of Langley's dealings. "There's a problem," Pike admitted. "Langley's bringing Judge Harold Voss up from Rapid City. If he arrives first, he could challenge Crowley's authority." "Then the hearing must happen first," Koa said. A knock cut them short. Noah Whitfield burst in, snow clinging to his coat, eyes alight. "I found it. The safe combination. Clara May got Langley drunk. He talked." "We can't steal," Sarah began. "Not steal," Iris corrected. "Recover evidence of crimes." They exchanged a look. Outside, the storm howled. Perfect cover. "I'll go," Sarah said. "Not alone," Koa replied. An hour later, they slipped through the blizzard to the hotel. The clerk slept at the desk, felled by Iris's special coffee. They climbed to Langley's room. The safe squatted against the wall like a metal brute. Sarah's hands trembled as she turned the dial. Click, click. The door swung open. Inside lay ledgers, contracts, correspondence, proof of bribes, forged deeds, coerced debts. Her own contract rested among a dozen others, women's names, manufactured obligations, sealed fates. "Monster," she whispered. "Take only what we need," Koa warned. They photographed pages with Father Moreno's camera, a new tool for his mission work, then replaced everything except Sarah's contract and 2 others, evidence they could present without exposing the night's work. They vanished back into the storm, They nearly ran straight into riders forcing their way through town. Sarah's heart lurched. Judge Harold Voss, pushing through the blizzard with his entourage, determined to reach Fort Pierre. Inside. Now, Koa murmured, pulling her into a narrow alley. They watched as Voss's men wrestled their horses, cursing the weather, the hour, the lack of proper lodging. The storm slowed them, but it wasn't stopping them. Back at Iris Dalton's boarding house, urgency filled the room. Voss will challenge everything, Marshal Owen Pike said grimly. He'll argue Apache witnesses don't count, that women can't speak without their husband's leave. Then we don't give him the chance, Sarah said. We petition Judge Samuel Crowley for an emergency hearing, tonight. In this storm? Pike shook his head. He'll come, Sarah said, if we tell him why. They went together. Past midnight, against the teeth of the blizzard, an unlikely procession crossed town. A frontier woman, an Apache leader, a Spanish priest, a reformed marshal, a boarding house owner, and a swelling crowd of ranchers, farmers, and townsfolk fed up with Victor Langley's abuses. Crowley opened the door in his nightshirt, took in the crowd, and sighed. I suppose this can't wait until morning. Justice can't wait, Sarah said simply. The judge studied her. This woman who had fled in fear and returned to fight, who bridged two worlds and drew strength from both. No, he agreed. It can't. He nodded once. 5 minutes. Court is in session. Outside, the storm roared. Inside, something steadier rose. The slow force of truth, of people standing together against those who would own them. Sarah squeezed Koa's hand, drew strength from the touch. Whatever came next, she would meet it head on. Running was finished. Later, the river lay silent beneath a canopy of stars, its surface smooth after the day's chaos of moving horses to higher ground. Sarah sat on a fallen cottonwood, exhaustion sinking into her bones. The emergency hearing had gone better than hope. Crowley had voided Langley's contracts and issued warrants. But the fight wasn't over. You should rest, Koa said softly. She turned to see him with 2 cups of Naya's tea, steam curling like spirits in the cold. He sat beside her, leaving respectful space. Can't, she admitted, taking the warmth. I keep hearing what Voss said before Pike detained him, that men like Langley always have another move. Let tomorrow wait, Koa said, gazing across the water. Tonight we won. Your words in that room, they moved stones I thought would never shift. Sarah smiled. When I showed the contracts, proved Langley did this to other women, did you see Evelyn Hart's face? She carried that shame for years, thinking she was alone. You gave them a voice, Koa said. That takes courage. I learned from you, Sarah replied. How you speak for your people without anger, just truth. In the distance, drums began their evening rhythm. Not the war beat outsiders imagine, but something deeper. The heartbeat of a living culture. Tell me about the drums, Sarah asked. Not the ceremony. I know that's private. What they mean to you. Koa was quiet a long moment. They remind us we are one people. Each drummer brings their own rhythm. Together it becomes something larger. He searched for words. Like your church bells, maybe. Calling people together. I haven't heard bells in months, she said, surprised. I don't miss them. Why would finding new music be wrong? He asked. They sat in companionable silence, sipping tea, watching stars tremble on the water. The day had been long, moving horses ahead of the spring flood, teaching children letters, helping Mira prepare medicines. But this quiet felt earned. After tomorrow, Koa asked gently, when the danger passes, what will you do? Sarah had dreaded the question. I don't know. I can't go back to who I was. But I'm not Apache either. No, he said. You're something new, someone who walks between." He set his cup aside and faced her. "My grandmother says such people are sacred. They carry messages between worlds." "Your grandmother also says I make terrible fry bread," Sarah said. "That is true," he smiled in the dark. "But you're learning." A splash in the river, a beaver or muskrat at night work, broke the quiet, and the sound reminded Sarah of old rhythms now gently changing. She realized how she used to measure time by Edgar Boone's habits: town gossip, church socials, the small tyrannies of routine. This life marked time differently. Hunting seasons, gathering days, moving camp, hours counted by need, not by convention. "I've been thinking," Sarah Whitfield said carefully, "about what Talon said, about building a place that serves both worlds. Somewhere people trade fairly, learn from each other. A trading post, yes, but more than that. A school. Neutral ground." She turned to Koa. "Is that foolish?" Pain flickered across his face, then softened. "My sister would have loved that idea. She believed understanding could cross any divide." Sarah reached out, hesitated, then laid her hand over his. "Tell me about her. Not the loss. The woman." "Sani," he said, warmth returning to his voice. 3 years younger than me, stubborn as a mule. She loved plants, every medicine, every flower. She'd draw them for hours trying to catch their spirit on paper. She sounds remarkable. When soldiers came for the children, she hid others before herself. Got caught because she went back for a little one's doll." He turned his palm up, threading their fingers together. "You remind me of her, not in face, but in spirit. That need to protect, to set things right." Sarah's heart thundered. This was closer than they'd ever been without necessity between them. "Koa, I know." His thumb traced slow circles on her hand. "Your world has rules. Mine has others. But tonight those rules feel far away." He lifted their joined hands, studying them in starlight, his bronze and work-worn, hers pale but now equally calloused. "My people say love is the 7th direction." 7th? I thought there were 6. "The 4 winds, earth, and sky. The 7th is within, the direction that holds all the others together." He released her hand but shifted nearer. "I think you understand that direction." Tears threatened. "When I came here, I was hollow, going through motions in a life I never chose. Your people, you gave me back to myself." "No," he said firmly. "You were always there. We just helped you remember." A night bird called across the water, answered by its mate. The sound pulled at something deep in Sarah's chest, a loneliness she hadn't named until it began to loosen. "That morning," she said softly, "when you found Noah Whitfield and me in the storm, why did you really stop? Tell me the truth." Koa smiled. "You were singing?" "What?" "Barely conscious, freezing, dying. And you were singing to your brother, a song about gathering at a river." He shook his head. "Anyone who sings to comfort another while facing death, that's someone worth saving." "I don't remember singing." "The body remembers what the mind forgets. You were fighting for him when you had nothing left." She wiped her eyes. "And now I fight for many. The children learning letters, the women finding their voices, even men like Marshall Owen Pike finding conscience." He stood and offered his hand. "Come, I want to show you something." They walked along the river to a small cottonwood grove that made a natural shelter. Fireflies drifted between the trees, late stragglers defying the cooling night. "Close your eyes," Koa said. She did. At first there were only the expected sounds: water, wind, insects, then more. An owl hunting, deer stepping carefully to drink. Behind them the camp's soft voices, A baby soothed, a laugh, and beneath it all, the steady drum. The night song, Koa murmured, everything alive adding its voice. This is what you gave back to me, too. She opened her eyes to find him watching her, breath stolen away. After Sani died, he said, I stopped listening. It was easier to hear only anger. Then you arrived, and I heard it again. The seventh direction, Sarah whispered. Koa, she began, voice catching. I'm still married. The law, the white man's law, paper and words. He cupped her face gently. I won't ask for what you cannot give, but hear my truth. His voice steadied. You are sunrise after my longest night, the first green shoot after wildfire. You are... She stopped his words with her lips. The kiss was careful, tentative, a question spoken without words. Koa's fingers slid into Sarah Whitfield's hair. Hers tightened on his shoulders. When they separated, both were breathless. I can't, Sarah murmured against his lips. Not while I'm still bound to him. It wouldn't be right. I know. He rested his forehead against hers. But knowing you feel this too, that's enough. For now. They stayed there, holding each other beneath a sky thick with stars, the river murmuring its old song. Neither spoke of the dangers still waiting. Victor Langley's threats, society's judgment, the distance between their worlds. You asked what you'll do after tomorrow, Koa said at last. She pulled back to read his face. Stay, he said simply. Not for me. Not even for my people. Stay for yourself. Build that neutral ground. Teach children from both sides. Show them bridges can be built, one person at a time, and us, we'll be whatever we choose to be. Time solves what impatience cannot. He smiled. Besides, someone has to teach you proper fry bread. Sarah laughed through her tears. Naya will never approve. She approves more than you think, he said. Tonight she told me the spirits brought you for a reason. Anyone who can make my stubborn heart sing again must carry strong medicine. They walked back toward camp hand in hand, in no hurry to return to separate lodges and proper distances. Above them, the Milky Way stretched like a river of light, the Trail of Souls, Koa called it, where all paths eventually meet. Thank you, Sarah said as the fires came into view. For what? For seeing me, she answered. Not the woman who ran, not a role forced on me, just me. He stopped, turned her to face him. That's all I've ever seen. One more kiss, soft as a promise. Then they parted. Sarah slipped into her lodge, aware of eyes that pretended not to notice, of smiles that said more than words. Inside, Noah Whitfield slept already. Nico's bow clutched like treasure. Tomorrow would bring fresh trials. But tonight, she had touched the seventh direction, that place within where all paths converge, where love becomes truth. She touched her lips, still warm with it. Beyond the lodge, drums kept their ancient rhythm. Somewhere in the dark, Koa listened to the same song. For the first time in her life, Sarah Whitfield knew exactly where she belonged. The dust cloud rose ahead, drifting like smoke from a signal fire. Sarah knew better. Through the field glasses Koa had taught her to use, she counted 15 riders threading the narrow canyon. Victor Langley rode at their center, flanked by hired guns. They'd chosen their ambush well. Early, Marshal Owen Pike muttered from behind a boulder. Thought we had till noon. Langley never liked schedules, Sarah said, checking her carbine. The weight felt different now. Not fear, but protection. Koa appeared at her side, silent as breath. Our people are set. North Ridge, South Draw. They won't see them until it's too late. Remember, Sarah said, loud enough for the mixed group to hear. "We want evidence, not bodies. Pike needs Langley alive to testify about the railroad schemes." "Tell that to them," Noah said, nodding toward the riders. They didn't come to talk. At 16, he'd earned his place among the defenders, though Sarah kept him with Nico at the safest vantage. The plan was simple. Let Langley's men enter the pass, then seal both ends. With the advantage of higher ground and a lifetime's knowledge of the land, they should have been able to force a surrender without spilling blood. But Sarah Whitfield had learned one hard truth on the frontier. Plans rarely survived their first collision with desperate men. "Here they come," someone whispered. Victor Langley's riders pushed into the narrow throat of the pass. Careful, but not careful enough. They expected to find a small, frightened party heading toward federal protection, not a coordinated force of Lakota warriors standing shoulder to shoulder with townspeople who had finally chosen a side. Koa lifted his hand. Waited. The riders pressed deeper. Then everything unraveled. One of Langley's men, sharper-eyed than the rest, caught movement along the ridge. His warning shout cracked the air at the same instant his rifle fired. The bullet flew wide, but the moment was lost. Koa's hand dropped. Warriors rose on both ridgelines, weapons leveled downward. Behind Langley's group, fighters stepped out to seal the retreat, while Marshal Owen Pike and 5 townsmen blocked the narrow mouth of the pass. "Drop your weapons," Pike shouted. "You're surrounded." For a single heartbeat, Sarah thought it might work. Langley's men glanced around, realizing they were outnumbered 3-1, exposed, boxed in. Then Langley spoke, his voice smooth, poisonous, the same charm that had destroyed so many lives. "Boys, they can't shoot us all," he called. "Rush the entrance. It's our only chance." Gunfire tore the canyon apart. Sarah dropped behind her boulder as bullets whined overhead. She heard Koa barking orders in Lakota, Pike shouting himself hoarse, horses screaming in terror. "Sarah!" Noah's voice cut through the chaos, sharp with fear. She looked up, and her breath froze. Edgar Boone. How had she missed him? He was climbing toward Noah's position, pistol clenched in his fist, his face twisted with rage. "No!" Sarah broke cover, scrambling uphill. Boone turned at the sound of her voice, the muzzle swinging toward her. Time stretched thin. She saw his finger tighten. Saw Noah move instinctively to shield her. Saw Nico already drawing his bow. The gun fired. The bullet tore through her sleeve, grazing flesh but missing bone. Pain flared, but her body moved before fear could take hold. Her carbine came up on instinct, hours of practice guiding her hands. She fired high, forcing Boone to dive for cover among the rocks. "You're mine!" he screamed. "The law says you're mine." "The law is wrong!" Sarah shouted back. She fired again, keeping him pinned while Noah and Nico repositioned. Below them, the fight was turning. Langley's men, trapped in the open, were falling back. Several were down, wounded, not dead. Even now, the Lakota and townspeople were showing restraint. Langley had dismounted, using his horse as cover while retreating toward a cluster of rocks. In his hand, Sarah glimpsed papers. The evidence. "He's going to destroy the ledgers," she shouted to Koa. Koa was already moving. He flowed down the slope like water, dodging shots with a speed that seemed unreal. But Langley had found solid ground, his remaining men forming a tight defensive ring. "Give it up, Langley!" Pike yelled. "You're finished!" "Never." Langley struck a match. "Without these papers, you've got nothing." Sarah made her choice. Leaving Boone to Noah and Nico, she edged along the ridge. The angle was wrong, the shot nearly impossible. But Naya had taught her more than hide work. The old woman was the finest shot in camp. "Breathe with the earth," Sarah whispered, sighting down the barrel. "Shoot between heartbeats." The carbine cracked. Langley's hand erupted in red. The match spun harmlessly away. He screamed, clutching his shattered fingers as the papers burst free, scattering on the wind. "The documents!" Koa shouted. What followed bordered on absurd. Men from both sides scrambling after flying pages, trying not to shoot one another. Even some of Langley's hired guns, sensing which way the world was turning, began grabbing evidence against their employer. But Edgar Boone was not finished. While everyone chased paper, he circled behind Sarah's position. "Hello, wife." She spun. He stood 10 feet away, pistol aimed straight at her face. His clothes were torn, blood streaking his skin from flying rock, but his eyes burned with a madness that iced her spine. "Put it down, Edgar," Sarah said evenly. "It's over." "Over?" He laughed, high and broken. "You humiliated me," Edgar Boone snarled. "Turned me into a joke. The whole territory knows my wife ran off with savages." "I ran to freedom," Sarah Whitfield said evenly. "There's a difference." "Freedom." He stepped closer, the pistol unwavering. "You're my property. If I can't have you, no one will." The arrow burst from his shoulder like a sudden branch sprouting from flesh. Boone screamed. The gun slipped from his fingers. Behind him, Nico already had another arrow nocked, calm and precise, while Noah Whitfield stood with a borrowed pistol, hands shaking but eyes locked. "Nobody owns my sister," Noah said, his voice cracking but unyielding. Boone collapsed, clutching his shoulder. The arrowhead had passed clean through, agony without death. Sarah kicked the fallen pistol aside and knelt beside him. "You'll live," she said quietly. "Live to see me free. Live knowing you have no power over me ever again." He answered with a stream of curses that once would have cut her to the bone. Now they were just noise. Around them, the fight bled out of the canyon. Victor Langley's men, leader wounded, papers secured, threw down their weapons. The Allied force closed in carefully, tending the injured on both sides. Koa came to Sarah's side, a thin cut on his cheek, otherwise untouched. "You shoot well for a schoolteacher. And you move well for a chief who claims he's getting old. I never claimed that." His gaze flicked to Boone, now bound and being treated by Father Lucas Moreno, whose hard-earned battlefield skills were saving lives. "What will you do with him?" Koa asked. Sarah watched Boone, her husband in name only, being secured. "Nothing. He's nothing to me now. Let the courts take him for his crimes. I have a life to build." Marshal Owen Pike approached, arms loaded with recovered papers. "Mrs. Whitfield, these documents, they're more than we hoped for. Names, dates, bribes, judges, senators, even a general. Langley's entire web is here." "Then use it," Sarah said. "Use it to help everyone he hurt." "This will reach Washington," Pike said. "You'll need to testify." She nodded, then looked around at the mixed circle, Apache warriors and townsfolk, men and women bound by the same hard hour. "First, we tend our wounded. All of them." The aftermath felt strangely quiet. Langley and Boone were taken into custody with 6 surviving gunmen. 3 men had died. Langley's men, all by their own choices. The Allies carried wounds, but none mortal. As the sun crested the ridge, they made camp by a spring. Sarah found herself working beside Iris Dalton, who had arrived with a wagon of medical supplies. "Quite a morning," Iris said, bandaging a townsman's grazed arm. "Not how I pictured my life," Sarah admitted. "Honey, nobody pictures the turn," Iris smiled. "It's what we do after that counts, and you've done something special." Sarah watched a ranch hand help an Apache warrior with a twisted ankle. Saw Nico teaching Noah and other boys, white and native alike, how to recover arrows safely. Even some of Langley's captured men spoke quietly with their guards, realization settling in. "It won't last," Sarah said softly. When danger fades, people go back to their corners. Maybe, Iris said, nodding toward Ash, who was patiently teaching Pike a few Apache words. Seeds land in strange soil. You never know what grows. That evening, as preparations began to return to Fort Pierre with prisoners and proof, Koa found Sarah on the ridge where she'd taken the impossible shot. "Any regrets?" he asked. "No," she said. "Just thinking about paths. One choice leading to another until you're somewhere you never imagined." He sat close, near enough to feel, not touching, mindful of watching eyes below. "The testimony," he said quietly. "Washington. It could take months." "I know," Sarah Whitfield said quietly. "I'll go with you." She turned, surprised by her own certainty. "To Washington?" Koa asked. "They barely consider my people human there. I'd be painted as the savage who corrupted a white woman." "Yes," he answered before she could soften it. His jaw tightened with resolve. "I know exactly what I'd be to them, but you won't face their judgment alone. My words may carry no legal weight, but they carry truth. Sometimes that's enough." Tears burned at Sarah's eyes. "What did I do to earn that kind of loyalty?" "You stood your ground," he said simply. "You fought back. You chose freedom over safety. Among my people, that makes you a warrior, worthy of any loyalty." Below them, a traveling song began, one voice rising, then another. Apache words wove together with English, imperfect but honest, forming something new. "Whatever happens in Washington," Sarah said, "I want to come back here, build the school, that neutral ground, a place where understanding can grow." "Then we'll build it together," Koa promised, as darkness settled fully over the land. "However long it takes." They walked down to rejoin the others. Morning would bring the ride to Fort Pierre, and after that, the far longer road east. There would be hearings and testimony, threats and delays, the slow grind of justice. But tonight, under stars that ignored every line humans drew on maps, Sarah Whitfield stood between two worlds and felt at home in both. The war for her freedom was finished. The harder work, building something worthy of that freedom, was just beginning. She thought of Edgar Boone, wounded and chained in the prison wagon, still shouting about ownership and rights. Once, his words had defined her entire life. Now they were only echoes, fading and powerless against the future she was choosing. The drums would sound again. Rivers would keep running. And somewhere between two cultures, a bridge was taking shape. One person, one choice, one scarred afternoon at a time. The courthouse in Fort Pierre loomed like a monument to everything that had changed, and everything that hadn't. Sarah smoothed her plain dress. She'd refused Iris Dalton's offer of finery, choosing practical clothes that reflected who she was now. Beside her, Koa wore his finest shirt, beadwork stitched by Naya's careful hands, a blend of tradition and the expectations of white men. "Ready?" Marshal Owen Pike asked. He looked older than he had weeks ago, the weight of threats from Victor Langley's remaining allies etched into his face. "As ready as anyone can be to face their past," Sarah replied. The courtroom was packed. Word had spread about the woman who exposed railroad corruption, who united settlers and Apache against a shared enemy. Some faces held support, others suspicion, a few open hostility. Judge Samuel Crowley presided, his presence steadying. Beside him sat Judge Harold Voss, freed on technical grounds, and now observing. His cold eyes followed Sarah as she took the stand. "Mrs. Sarah Whitfield," the prosecutor began, "you are accused by your husband of theft and abandonment. How do you plead?" "Not guilty," Sarah said, her voice clear. "And I challenge the premise itself. A person cannot steal what is already theirs, nor abandon a bond that was never freely chosen." Murmurs rippled through the room. Boone, his arm still bound from Nico's arrow, half rose before his attorney forced him back down. Furthermore, Sarah continued, I bring countercharges, coercion, unlawful confinement through debt bondage, and conspiracy to commit human trafficking. The prosecutor, Daniel Frost, who had taken the case without pay, allowed himself a thin smile. Present your evidence. What followed dismantled Boone's lies piece by piece. Sarah produced records showing she had contributed more to the trading post than she ever removed. Witnesses testified to Boone's gambling, his debts, his arrangement with Langley. Then came the moment that shifted the room. Evelyn Hart took the stand. The widow once shamed into silence. She spoke calmly, with dignity, about her own contract with Langley, about the fear and isolation that had trapped her. She showed us we weren't alone, Evelyn said, looking straight at the judges. That what happened to us wasn't lawful just because it was written on paper. 3 more women followed. By the time they finished, Boone's lawyer was soaked through with sweat. And then it was Boone's turn to speak. He took the stand with the confidence of a man long used to being believed. Edgar Boone spun his tale smoothly, stories of Sarah's supposed instability, her corruption by savages, her theft of what he called his rightful property. She's my wife, he insisted. The law says many things, Judge Samuel Crowley cut in calmly, including that marriage is a partnership, not ownership. Continue. Boone's control unraveled. His testimony slid into ranting accusations. Witchcraft, Sarah leading Apache war parties, conspiracies stretching all the way to Washington. Each word dug him deeper. Enough, Judge Crowley finally said. Mr. Boone, do you have any actual evidence of theft? She took herself, Boone shouted. She was mine, and she took herself away. The silence that followed pressed down hard. Even Judge Harold Voss shifted uncomfortably. Daniel Frost rose. The defense rests, Your Honor. I believe Mr. Boone has made our case for us. But Voss leaned forward, eyes sharp. If I may, Judge Crowley, there is the matter of this woman's current arrangements, living among Indians, unmarried, setting a scandalous example. Sarah felt Koa tense beside her. She laid a hand on his, steady. Your Honor, she said, standing. May I speak? Crowley nodded. Voss scowled. Sarah faced the packed courtroom. Yes, I live among the Apache. Yes, I've learned their ways. And yes, I've found more humanity there than I ever knew in my marriage. She paused, drawing breath. The only scandal is that we've written laws allowing one human being to own another through marriage, that we sign treaties we never intend to honor, that we build prosperity on the backs of those we decide are lesser. You forget yourself, Voss snapped. You're a white woman. I'm a human being, Sarah shot back, as are the Apache who sheltered me, as are the women trapped by contracts like mine, as are the settlers cheated by men like Victor Langley. Justice should not depend on color or gender. Either the law protects all of us, or it protects none of us. The courtroom erupted. Applause collided with shouts of outrage. Judge Crowley hammered for order until the noise finally broke. The court finds Sarah Whitfield not guilty of all charges, he said at last. Furthermore, given the evidence presented, the court grants her petition for divorce on grounds of cruelty and abandonment of marital duties. Boone leapt to his feet. You can't. I can, and I have, Crowley replied. Mr. Boone, you are under arrest for conspiracy, false accusations, and assault. Marshal Owen Pike. As Pike led Boone away, still shouting, Judge Voss rose. This is an outrage. Federal authorities will hear of this travesty. They already have, a new voice said. A man in a federal marshal's uniform entered. Judge Harold Voss, I have warrants for your arrest. Seems the documents seized from Langley included some interesting payments. To a certain judge. Voss went pale as he was taken into custody, muttering about savage justice. Sarah almost laughed. If this was savage justice, she'd take it over civilized corruption any day. When the courtroom finally emptied, Sarah stood on the steps with her chosen family. Koa, Noah, Naya, Iris Dalton, even Pike. The weight that had pressed on her for months was gone. So, Iris asked, what now? Sarah looked at Koa, then at the gathered faces, ranchers, townsfolk, Apache, waiting. Now we build. The site they chose lay halfway between Fort Pierre and the Apache camp, neutral ground with good water and shelter from the wind. Within days, volunteers from both communities arrived, raising walls and roofs side by side. Sarah watched a frame rise, part school, part trading post, part meeting hall. But more than buildings were taking shape. Ranchers' sons worked alongside Apache youth, trading tools and stories. Town women learned beadwork from Naya while teaching letters in return. It's working, Noah said, pausing from sawing planks. At 17, he'd grown tall and strong, standing nearly eye to eye with Nico. Early days, Sarah cautioned, though she smiled. Koa approached with Father Lucas Moreno and a surprising guest, Talon himself. The chief surveyed the work, thoughtful. This is good, Talon said, Naya translating softly. But buildings are only wood and stone. What matters is here. He touched his chest. Bridges between peoples are built here, he said, in the heart. That evening they gathered, not for a formal ceremony, but a shared meal after hard work. Food passed from hand to hand, stories followed, and laughter found its way into the open air. Sarah Whitfield sat on an overturned crate, teaching a cluster of children, mixed bloodlines, mixed hopes, the alphabet, chalked in charcoal on rough wooden boards. Why do we need the white man's writing? One Apache boy asked. Because words on paper carry power in their world, Sarah answered. If you understand their weapons, you can protect what's yours. Like you learned ours? The boy pressed. She smiled. Exactly like that. As night settled, a fire was lit. People drifted toward the glow, drawn by warmth, by voices, by the novelty of being together. Stories crossed the flames, Apache tales of coyote and clever survival, settler accounts of wagon trails and storms, new stories forming in the space between. Koa found Sarah sitting a little apart, watching it all with quiet wonder. Any regrets? He asked, echoing his question from Drybone Pass. None, she said, meeting his eyes. He sat closer than he would have months ago, still mindful of watching faces. My only regret is that Sani couldn't see this. She dreamed of such things. She sees, Sarah said softly, through every child who learns, every bridge raised, every wall that falls. They watched the firelight dance across faces that had once turned away from each other. It wasn't perfect. There were cautious distances, old hurts not yet healed. But it was a beginning. The federal marshals want me in Washington, Sarah said after a while. To testify about Langley's network, the corruption, all of it. Koa nodded. You'll go. I have to. She turned toward him. But I'll come back. This is home now. I know, he said, smiling. I'll keep your students practicing their letters. My spelling is fine, she teased. It's your handwriting that needs work. Says the woman who still burns fry bread. Their laughter joined the sounds around the fire. Tomorrow would bring resistance, from both communities, from those who feared change. There would be setbacks and hard days when the dream felt fragile. But tonight, under stars that judged no one, Sarah saw the future forming in small moments, a ranch wife learning beadwork, an Apache warrior helping set a door frame, children of both worlds chasing each other through dust and dusk. She thought of Edgar Boone in his cell, still clinging to the idea of ownership. He had tried to make her small. Instead, he had driven her to find a strength she never knew she had, to build something that would outlast any contract. "Thank you," she said suddenly to Koa. "For what?" "For seeing more in me than I saw myself, for believing I could be a bridge." He took her hand openly now. "You were always a bridge," he said. "You just needed to find your river." Around the fire, someone began an old hymn Sarah recognized, reshaped by drumbeat and open sky. Voices joined, weaving past and present into something new. She understood then. The world didn't change in courts or capitals alone, but around fires where people chose to see each other as human, one story, one meal, one song at a time. Sparks lifted toward the stars, carrying prayers in many languages. Sarah Whitfield, teacher, survivor, bridge between worlds, added her voice, finally free to sing her own song. Spring returned to the Dakota Territory like a cautious friend. Snow retreated, green shoots pushing through dark soil. Sarah stood in the doorway of the finished schoolhouse, watching children arrive, some on foot from town, others riding in from the Apache camp. 6 months after the trial, the sight still stirred her. "Sister Sarah!" Little Mary Hart ran up, braids flying. "Look, I wrote my name in both alphabets." Sarah studied the careful letters, English alongside the symbols Naya taught. "Beautiful work, Mary. Your mother will be proud." Inside, the room buzzed with voices. Noah and Nico served as assistants now, helping manage the 23 students who came each day. Maps hung beside traditional paintings. Arithmetic shared wall space with beadwork patterns, learning that honored both worlds. "Class, settle please," Sarah called. "We have special visitors today." The door opened to admit Marshall Grant Holloway and a woman Sarah had written to but never met, Margaret Stone of the Women's Legal Aid Society in Washington. Sarah's testimony months earlier had sparked changes she was still learning to measure. "Children," Sarah said, "Mrs. Stone has come all the way from the Capitol to see what we've built here." Margaret Stone was younger than Sarah Whitfield expected, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She studied the classroom in silence, white children and Apache learning side by side, sharing slates, trading stories. "Remarkable," she murmured. "Your letters didn't do it justice." After lessons, Sarah led her visitors through the growing settlement. What had begun as a single schoolhouse had spread outward, a trading post jointly run by townspeople and Apache, a small clinic where frontier medicine worked alongside traditional healing, even a simple chapel where Father Lucas Moreno welcomed every faith without question. "This is what becomes possible," Sarah said as they walked, "when cooperation replaces conquest." Marshall Grant Holloway, who had replaced the disgraced federal officials, nodded thoughtfully. "Reports from this area show crime down, trade up, and conflicts nearly gone. Whatever you're doing, it works." "We're treating each other as human," Sarah replied. "It's not complicated." They paused at a small memorial garden honoring those lost on both sides. Fresh flowers lay at every marker, placed by many different hands. "Your testimony in Washington," Margaret said softly, "has already led to 3 bills protecting women's property rights. Contracts like yours are being challenged nationwide." Tears threatened Sarah's composure. "Good. No one should endure what I did." "There's more." Margaret opened a folder. "The divorce is final, and Edgar Boone was convicted on all counts. 10 years of hard labor." The words brought no triumph, only a quiet grief for a life wasted. "And Victor Langley received 20 years, with additional charges pending as more victims come forward, Margaret added. Your courage started an avalanche. Please, Sarah said gently. Just call me Sarah. Mrs. Hale belonged to someone I no longer am. That evening, the community gathered for a spring planting feast. Tables sagged beneath shared abundance. Venison from Apache hunters, bread from town ovens, vegetables from the communal garden. Sarah sat, as she often did, between worlds. To her left, Iris Dalton entertained listeners with stories of Fort Pierre's transformation. To her right, Naya discussed medicinal plants with the town doctor and a curious rancher. Across the firelight, Koa met Sarah's gaze with a smile that still quickened her heart. They had been careful these past months, respecting old wounds, letting laws settle, allowing futures to take shape. Their bond was no secret, but it had grown with patience. Attention, everyone. Marshal Owen Pike rose, lifting his cup. I've news from the territorial governor. The crowd stilled. Such messages rarely carried good tidings. He's officially recognizing this settlement as Hope's Crossing, a name chosen to reflect the bridge between our communities, and he's appointing a local council with equal representation from both peoples. Cheers broke out. Sarah felt Koa's hand slip into hers beneath the table. There's more, Pike continued, smiling. Sarah Whitfield, he's appointing you the first director of integrated education for the territory. Official position, salary, authority to establish similar schools elsewhere. Applause rolled through the gathering. Not polite, but heartfelt. People who once saw Sarah as property now recognized her as a leader. Talon rose, command settling over the crowd despite his years. Through Naya's words, he spoke. When the woman who would not be owned came to us, some said she brought trouble. This was true. But sometimes trouble is the storm that waters new growth. Today we see green shoots rising. He turned his gaze to Sarah. You walk between worlds now. This is your true name among us. Earned, not given. The words wrapped around her like belonging. Sarah stood. Everything I am, I learned from all of you. From Apache wisdom about freedom and community. From townspeople brave enough to stand against corruption. From children who see friends where others once saw enemies. She looked across the fire-lit faces. Hope's Crossing isn't just a place, it's a promise. That understanding is possible, that worlds can meet without one conquering the other. Pretty words, a slurred voice cut in from the edge of the gathering. But we all know what this really is. Sarah's blood chilled. Miles Cutter, one of Edgar Boone's old associates, stood swaying with drink and spite. How he had avoided arrest this long was a mystery. A white woman playing Indian, he sneered, malice flashing in his eyes. He kept talking, spitting venom about her blood, her faith, her place in the world. The silence that followed felt heavy as a raised hammer. On both sides of the firelight, hands drifted toward weapons. Miles Cutter, Sarah Whitfield said, stepping forward. Her voice was steady, though her heart thundered. You're drunk, and you're not welcome. Leave. He sneered. Or what? Your red lovers will scalp me? Ugly laughter spilled from him. Everyone knows what you do with that chief. Savage rites, things God never meant. The sharp crack of Sarah's palm across his face echoed through the gathering. Miles staggered back, stunned. The only unnatural thing here, Sarah said coldly, is hate. You're a small man clinging to old poisons. Look around. Your world is already dying. We're building something better. His hand slid toward his gun and froze. Nico and Noah Whitfield had stepped in behind him, arrows drawn. Marshal Owen Pike moved forward, badge catching the firelight. You're under arrest, Pike said quietly. Drunk and disorderly, threatening a federal official, and odds are, We'll find more. He leaned in. You can walk away breathing or be carried. Your choice. As Miles was hauled off, still muttering curses, the tension slowly eased. Laughter returned, cautious at first, but the moment lingered like a scar, a reminder that not everyone welcomed change. There will be others like him, Koa said softly. I know, Sarah replied. Then she gestured toward the mingled crowd, already drifting back to food and stories. But there are more like us, and every day there are more. Later, as the feast thinned, Sarah walked with Koa down to the river, the same bend where months earlier she had first tasted freedom. Now it was theirs, a place where truths were spoken. Director of Education, Koa said thoughtfully. Will you take it? If I do, it means travel, Sarah said. New schools, weeks away from here, from you. Then we make the time between count. He turned to face her fully. Sarah Whitfield, I have something to ask. Her breath caught. By our custom, a man brings horses to the woman's family, but you have no one to bargain with. So I ask you myself, will you accept my horses? Will you let me court you, properly, by both our ways? She laughed through tears. How many horses? All I own, 3, he said, though Nico says a woman who shoots like you is worth at least 5. She pretended to weigh it. 3 horses, for a woman who still burns fry bread. Naya says your bread is improving, he said solemnly. Slightly. They stood by the river where flight had turned into purpose, where drums from camp blended with fiddle music from town, 2 rhythms finding harmony. Yes, Sarah said simply, to your horses, to your courtship, to whatever comes next. Koa's kiss tasted of wood smoke and promises. When they finally parted, the stars watched in silence. When? He asked. After the first new school opens, after the territorial council meets, after we know this can last. He smiled. I've learned patience from you. And I've learned impatience from you, she replied. We balance. They walked back hand in hand, no longer hiding. Some faces still held doubt, but many showed acceptance, even joy. Change was moving, one heart at a time. As the night ended, Sarah stood in her doorway, watching families drift home. Some to teepees, some to cabins, some to the new shared houses rising between. Children shouted goodbyes in 2 languages, already forgetting they were meant to be divided. Noah appeared beside her, taller now than she was. You look happy, he said. More than happy, she answered. Hopeful. He grinned. That old life? It wasn't living. This is, Nico says by next winter I'll be ready for my first real buffalo hunt. She watched him run off to join his friend. 2 young men from different worlds planning tomorrow together. Not perfect harmony, but honest effort. Not sameness. Respect. Her mother's faded blue kerchief fluttered at her throat. Sarah touched it, remembering the frightened woman who had fled with nothing else. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who built schools and bridges, who loved across boundaries, who walked between worlds without belonging to any cage. Tomorrow would bring resistance, more miles cutters, more tests. But tonight, Hope's Crossing lived up to its name, a place where rivers met, where understanding grew, where courage outpaced fear. The drums beat on, joined by a fiddle's song. Sarah Whitfield, teacher, survivor, bridge builder, added her voice. She belonged to no one but herself. And in that freedom, she had learned how to help others find their own. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening, and for allowing this story to speak to your heart. The Wild West still holds countless truths, some painful, some tender, all worth remembering. Stay with us, subscribe, comment, and invite others to discover these untamed stories. From our hearts to yours. Thank you for being part of this journey. Aviso legal barra disclaimer. Each story shared here is produced for storytelling enjoyment. Certain scenes may include fictional or dramatized elements inspired by historical circumstances. Although AI tools assist us in visuals, narration, and script development, the emotional tone, editing, and quality control are conducted by people to ensure meaningful experiences. We fully uphold YouTube's policies, using no deceptive recreations or impersonations of real individuals. All creative resources are properly licensed. Unauthorized copying, re-uploading, or remixing is not permitted. Thank you for supporting the effort behind every episode we create.